Hello, and welcome to the Futures Initiative podcast. At the Futures Initiative, we believe in a university worth fighting for. Today, we're going to talk about Puerto Rico. And before we begin, I just got to practice and say it. HPR es otra cosa.
That's right.
And so in that vein, let's begin with the fun stuff. It's all fun stuff, really. But let's start with introducing our panel, of course. We have the fabulous Yomaira Figueroa, who is a professor at Hunter College and the directora of El Centro, which is an incredible Puerto Rican archive here in New York City and part of the City University of New York. And also we have Vallerie Matos, who is the Futures Initiative Fellow and a PhD student in English, just beginning to write her dissertation here at the Graduate Center. And it is very exciting. And my name is Shelly Eversley, and I'm the Faculty Chair of the Futures Initiative. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us and having us here.
It's fantastic to have you, and I can't wait for this conversation. You know, I love talking to both of you. So today, I think we should just start with the super fun stuff, and let's talk about Bad Bunny, because Yomaira's 3-year-old has been to a Bad Bunny concert in Puerto Rico at least twice.
More than I have.
Yes, my baby went. You know, my child, my partner and I, we have a 3.5-year-old, and he really believes in a holistic musical education, like power to the people type, you know? Mm-hmm. And so we exposed our son to all kinds of music, both things that, you know, my husband's grandparents listened to and the things that I listen to. He listens to all these things. But Bad Bunny is one of the kind of main things. It's there. He loves it. He dances. We do dance parties before bed. So for this summer in Puerto Rico, Bad Bunny had that residency. The first month, or I believe the first 3 weeks of that residency were reserved for Puerto Rico residents. And I'm a part-time resident of Puerto Rico, and so I was able to get some tickets, but I was so sad, like on the first day of the concert, and I was like, I really want to bring my son, but how can I afford to bring him? He's so little. These tickets have now become so expensive, but I was able to find some tickets online that day, and it worked. And I brought my son, and he had it was his first concert, and I mean, my little baby can say my first concert ever was Bad Bunny, La Residencia de Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rican residents, day one, right? And then later on, my mom asked me to get her tickets when she heard that, ay, ese concierto es una celebración de nuestra cultura. All of a sudden, her mind changed about Bad Bunny. She was like, I want to go to the concert. I was able to find her tickets, and she was like, I will not, her and her husband. And she said she wouldn't go without the baby. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I had to find another ticket for the baby. And they were able to finagle a way to sit together, and they had a great time. So my 3-year-old went twice.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
You have to show us pictures later.
Oh, so cute. He had, for one of them, he had like a little pava hat on, and it's just very adorable. All around, there was vejigantes there, and the big cabezudos, and, you know, on that first day, all these really beautiful, kind of culturally sustaining like booths and, you know, practices or whatever. And so it was really nice, and my son was able to go through and see all these amazing things. So it was beautiful through and through.
It sounds amazing. And of course, oops, I'm sorry, I just hit the microphone for those of you who are listening. Apologies. What's really, really, really phenomenal about Bad Bunny's praxis is the theory and the practice of his cultural work. Is that it's not just about the music, it's about archiving and communicating a history of Puerto Rican culture that is incredibly diverse, and also about encouraging responsible tourism, ethical tourism, and also that residency that he did for a month or for, 20 shows? I don't remember how many shows it was. Over 30 shows, brought in at least $200 million in revenue to Puerto Rico in the low season. And we know that Puerto Rico has a very, very complicated relationship to the United States and to climate disasters and to
the tourist economy.
So I wonder, you know, we're talking about Bad Bunny, but we're also talking about the ways in which Futures Initiative is really advocating and working to advance equity and innovation in higher education. And for us, we understand that equity and innovation go hand in hand. You can't have equity without diversity. You can't have innovation without equity, and diversity. And so something about the work of Bad Bunny is a great way for us to get into why it matters that we have these cultural workers, these artists who are actually thinking about all those things and innovating the ways in which Puerto Ricans are helping themselves and Puerto Ricans are thinking about decolonization and power, and the ways in which both of you are thinking about empowered Puerto Rican identities, histories, legacies, and also, importantly, archives. So, why does all this matter to you? And thinking about Bad Bunny and thinking about his cultural work and how that shapes sort of pop cultural and even academic and critical understanding of Puerto Rico and the issues that you're thinking about in your own respective works.
You want me to go first? Okay, great. I think I love your framing of Bad Bunny as a culture worker, because culture work in Puerto Rico has particular kinds of connotations of like grassroots, coming from like within these communities. And Bad Bunny actually comes from Vega Baja, which is where my family comes from, and is from Almirante, which is also where my family is from. So in many ways, I get very proud. I'm like, wow, from Vega Baja, from the small municipality on the coast. But that municipality is very rich in a particular culture and history, and that is a history of Blackness, of enslavement, of plantations. Had the first sugar refinery in the entire Caribbean. I mean, not the entire Caribbean. The first sugar refinery in Puerto Rico was there. And I'm thinking about the importance of the cultural work as a stepping stone to really understanding oneself in the context of Puerto Rico, its status as a colony, its status as a possession along with 4 others of the United States, right? And the ways in which it's never had sovereignty. And I'm thinking about how Bad Bunny has been able to engage with and illuminate so much cultural work and intellectual work through his platform, through his music, and how powerful that is. The cultural work is a gateway. It's the opening. We know that when we're teaching classes, when we're talking to our students, when we're developing our syllabus, we're like, how can I capture your imagination? How can I bring you into this? How can I get you excited? And we know that right now across the country, there's many professors, particularly those in Puerto Rican Studies or folks who are doing work in music or even literature, are teaching Bad Bunny. One of my former students is, who's now a professor, is teaching a Bad Bunny course. Petra Rivera, Vanessa Diaz, they have been teaching Bad Bunny classes. And what's so interesting is that what we have seen is the students come in for this popular topic. They come in to see Bad Bunny, just like folks are coming into a Beyonce class, right? Oh, I'm taking a class on Beyonce. Oh, the questions in this class, this gender studies class, is really interesting. I might want to take another class. And so it becomes this portal, this possibility for one to think about the most important preoccupations or themes in popular culture, see them through a particular kind of lens of like critical knowledge, theory, right? And then are able to then say, look, there's so many things that you can study. There's so many ways for us to think about this and complicate a lot of our discourses. Now, Bad Bunny has done that in the context of Puerto Rican history, Puerto Rico's radical history, its colonial history, its contemporary history of resistance. He has been able to shed light on and even reframe some troubling symbols and tropes within the culture. But I think most importantly, one of the things that he has done is tapped into a younger generation of musicians. This little salsa band that he created, Los Sobrinos, which closed out the concert in the third act, he recruited these students from the musical conservatory in Puerto Rico. They were first-year students. And he said, you are all great. I'm going to bring you in and we're going to do that. I mean, they're performing in this global stage. He's taking local bands from Puerto Rico and having them open, right, his global concerts, right, his global tour. And so there are all these ways in which he has honed in on a particular kind of well-worn and well-understood love of Puerto Rico by its people. As we are very fervent. I think there's that meme that says, I just want a partner who will love me like a Puerto Rican loves their flag. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But he has been able to bring that together, right? And present it to a new generation of scholars, and to that end, I mean, a new generation of students, of everyday people. My mother was, he, for the video, the visuals, the visualizers for his album, before the videos came out, he had Professor Jorel Melendez Vadillo at the University of Wisconsin. He asked him, hey, can you write some facts about Puerto Rico for me? Can you please write a history? Because I want this to accompany my videos. If people are going to stream it, they're going to read the history of Puerto Rico in Spanish. And the same thing for the concert. At the concert, this musical, this kind of musical phenomenon that was happening there and all of these genres and all these things, the concert actually opened with facts about Puerto Rico put on the screen, right? Like, you have to sit here, you're waiting for the concert, you're going to read all of these important facts and history points about Puerto Rico. And this is why culture work is important. This is why, right, to take seriously one's history, the histories of people who have been invisibilized, marginalized, colonized, right? Like, all of these folks, and say your history is so important, we're going to put it on the world stage, and I'm going to try to make it accessible to you in every way. That's equity, right?
That is equity.
So
it's, which, you know, what's really great is that we're talking about this in, you know, pop culture, and academic work do intersect. And there isn't, and there shouldn't be some big separation between the kind of scholarship that we do and the way it applies and moves in the world outside of school. And, you know, I'm thinking about you, Vallerie, because, you know, you're part of the future of higher ed, and you're part of the future of the academy, and you just started writing a dissertation, and I know you're worried, sitting here, nervous, sitting here next to somebody that you really admire.
So much.
And
you have no idea.
I have an idea, because Vallerie has communicated these things, and you just started writing a dissertation. Can you tell us about it, and how and what drew you to the work that you're doing in your project?
Yes. So my research centers sonic life in it centers sonic life in Afro-diasporic poetics, archives, literature, music, embodied epistemologies. And what really brought me to this work was, like, back in the day, undergrad, baby student. It was protest music, Puerto Rican protest music, actually. And one song in particular, Querido FBI by Calle 13, right? And so this song was written, recorded, and distributed within 24 hours of the assassination of Filiberto Ojeda Rios, who was the leader of Los Macheteros. And so it was, not only did he report, like, the details of Filiberto's murder by the FBI, right? But he demands a call to action, calling, like, pueblo by pueblo, by their name. And for me, that was not only moving, but it was such a lesson in the way music, sound, shouting into the mic were such important tools of activation and rebellion. And so sound just became a thing. And then there was one day where I saw a sort of concert clip of them, and hold on, are we gonna edit this?
No. Go for it. It's fine. Everything's fine. Catch your breath.
Fela Kuti. I saw a concert of Fela Kuti, and I heard, thank you.
Did you ever see it on Broadway?
I didn't, but I saw some clips of the video, and I heard resemblances between, like, Querido FBI and Fela Kuti, and I was like, hold on, what is this, right? And I'm an undergrad, and then I learned the word Afro-diaspora, and then I'm like, oh, it's in the sounds, it's in the music, it's in all, you know, and so then that's where sort of my obsession with the sonics came in.
That's pretty great. That was a fantastic description, especially because Vallerie Matos is at the very beginning of writing her dissertation, and it sounds fabulous already, and I know from the little bits that I've read, it is indeed brilliant. Thank you, Vallerie. And I just wanted to think about this too, and just kind of point out to everyone who's listening that City University of New York, Centro, and all of the 25 campuses in New York have a very, very special relationship to thinking about Puerto Rico. Not only is our chancellor, Felix Matos Rodriguez, Puerto Rican, but as you know, CUNY 1969, which we'll definitely put in our show notes, the Puerto Rico syllabus, even the foundation of Black and Latino studies across CUNY, and I happen to be a chair of one of those programs at Baruch College, are all inspired by the activisms and collaborations between Puerto Rican students and African American students and Black students and Caribbean students, really demanding visibility, justice, and an education that reflects the diversity of New York City, because as we all know, CUNY is a great experiment and the People's University here in New York City. So I'm wondering now, just pivoting a little bit to El Centro, can you tell us what kind of archives El Centro is building and why it matters?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you all about it. You feeling good?
Yes,
We're feeling great. Okay. And so Centro is the largest research institute, archive, and library of the Puerto Rican experience. It was in the diaspora, so that is centered in Puerto Rican studies in the diaspora. Outside of us, anything that is remotely of our size is in Puerto Rico in terms of Puerto Rican archives. It was founded in 1973 by a coalition of students, professors, community activists, and organizers in the wake of the creation of Black and ethnic studies. In the wake of in the ensuing years after the creation of Black studies and ethnic studies on the West Coast in 1967, 1968, on the East Coast more into 1969 and moving forward, what we saw was these burgeoning departments that wanted to be their own college. They didn't want to be departments. They wanted to be their own university, but settled for the creation of departments, right? These were now popping up all over the United States, but didn't really have a central locus, right, that would hold those materials. And that's where Centro was born. They wanted a research institute that would be the kind of backbone, the support for the burgeoning field of Puerto Rican studies. And so since then, it has been 52 years. We're turning 53 in February of 2026. And I'm its 8th director and the first woman to be appointed as, permanent director of Centro. And I happen to be an Afro-Puerto Rican woman and from the diaspora, and that makes me so proud because it really shows it follows the history itself of Puerto Rico and our kind of diasporic but deeply rooted and connected experience of Puerto Rico. Now, Centro has over 300 archival collections. The first one, it was founded with the Jesus Colon collection, and Jesus Colon was a really important writer and organizer, union leader, and political thinker. And we have archives that include things like Pura Teresa Belpre's materials and her puppets. She was the first Puerto Rican librarian in the New York City system, and actually she created the Children's Story Hour that we still have now.
Oh, wow.
We also, have, so many collections. We have collections of the government of Puerto Rico, as well as elected officials that were Puerto Rican, like Olga Mendez and others. And then we also have really important collections that are connected to our arts and our cultural practices in New York City. We really deeply believe in the preservation of this history and the dissemination of this work and creating accessible materials and research available to the public. So for us, that has been the central mission of Centro for all of these years. And I think now it would be really beautiful to think about that early committee that wanted to see Centro created in the early 1970s, and for them to see it now, 53 years later, a huge center with a gallery, with an enormous archive, with a data center, with a media center, with 92 employees, right?
Wow.
With, just producing documentaries and podcasts and, any number of projects, tools, and data sets that for us serves to further the sharing and dissemination of knowledge, but also to transform our communities, right? By offering them ways to see themselves and to see each other, right? And so that is what Centro does, and it's a hard job, but I am so honored to be one of the people in this long line of people to lead this really beloved institution, honestly.
That's really great.
You overhauled the place. I remember Centro before you, and it was not what it is now. And so the care and the work that you've poured into it is very visible. It's very noticeable. It is. We're so grateful for it.
Thank you. I mean, there has been like so much. I've heard that in many ways, and I think about it, and sometimes I feel like a little bad, but then I often want to honor the people who came before me, because I'm like, they did what they could in their moment to push this forward, and I get to do this work because they laid all this ground for me, right?
Of course.
And so that I try to like kind of frame it in that way, but I'm so excited that people feel welcomed at Centro. It's actually a place that I physically hardly ever would go to, right? I didn't necessarily feel that way, but maybe I wasn't connecting the right way, or it wasn't sending out the right messaging, right? In terms of like, todos tenemos un sitio at Centro, we all have a place at Centro, right? Like tu historia lives here, right?
Yeah.
So we have that. But I think the other thing that changes, I think, generationally is my PhD is in ethnic studies. So by virtue of that, I think by itself, instead of coming in to the role as like a disciplinarily trained person that says like, okay, well, I'm a political theorist, And so now this is the Centro of Puerto Rican Studies for Political Theory, because I just want to do that one thing, or I am an anthropologist, and then now we're only going to do that. Coming out of an undergrad in Puerto Rican Studies, coming out of a graduate program in comparative ethnic studies out of UC Berkeley, that completely reshaped the way I thought about knowledge, what I thought about what it meant putting knowledge into practice, community, what it means to take in multiple perspectives, to kind of try to break down hierarchies in all these ways. Like these areas of study, Black studies, ethnic studies, Latino studies, Puerto Rican studies, they all offer us a completely different way to look at the world
100%.
and to reimagine our ethical commitments to each other. And I think coming into Centro that way made me think like there's so many possibilities here. I just want to like open the door a little wider and wider and wider and see who else can fit in, who else can come in, who else can help us expand and maybe even break down these walls and do something different with our research and our community, you know?
I love that, especially because you're sitting right next to somebody who's taking advantage of those opportunities. In fact, you've got 2 archival projects going, a sonic project, and then, of course, one with around... Go ahead, tell us about your project. I was thinking about your New Rican poet founder.
Yeah, I was working with Lois Elaine Griffith and her sonic archive.
I love her.
She's amazing. She's the best human being ever. So I've been working with her to transcribe those tapes and to digitize some tapes, about 23 tapes, where she was having conversations. Her and Pedro Pietri were hosting folks who had any connection to the New York Poets Cafe. And so they were sitting down, dinner style, talking, gossiping, creating poetry together. It was just, it's something that I got to really dive into and listen to this summer, and it was healing in a million ways, and it was informative in a million ways, and it taught me a lot. So that, to be able to be with the folks that, especially that are not here anymore, or to be with someone who is still here and can still speak to those things, is everything, right?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing to think about all kinds of archives, including the kind of tapes of dinner parties that have these luminaries. I mean, Pedro Pietri or Miguel Algarin or Lois Griffith. All these people really, really created a scene, an important scene, not just in New York, in the Lower East Side, but across the United States, including Puerto Rico, which, by the way, for those people who are listening right now, they should know that Puerto Rico was sort of acquired by the United States after a war with Spain. And in that acquiring, they acquired the Philippines, Hawaii, and Guam. Thank you. So I want to think a little bit about how I want to talk a little bit about how we can imagine building archives.
Sorry, Cuba.
Cuba, they did not get.
No, they died for a little bit. We were in we were there. I forgot what they call it, like a paternalistic kind of relationship with Cuba. Yes.
See?
We were a protectorate. The U.S. was in like 1898. It took possession of Puerto Rico and became protectorate of Cuba.
Oh wow! When did they? This is a different panel.
It's a different
conversation.
We'll talk about it, yeah.
Because that one got left out of my little history lesson, and I have a PhD too. I always thought that the United States lost Cuba, didn't get Cuba like they wanted, and are still mad about it.
That's true. That's true.
Still true.
But that's true, particularly post-revolution, because the protectorate gave them a lot of power, leading up from 1898, leading up to the revolution.
I see.
So it was kind of like puppets. Kind of, gumbo diplomacy, kind of,
Gumbo diplomacy. We're going to put all these terms inside of our show notes. So make sure, if you're listening and you want to learn more about some of these terms you haven't heard, follow us. You can drop in at futuresinitiative.org, and we're going to have the show notes. And we're also going to list your books and your publications and your work. And we're going to think about the ways that people can kind of dive deeper into thinking about Puerto Rico. Particularly, I want to know about how we should be thinking about sovereignty and what are the conversations happening around decolonization in Puerto Rico, and why is this so important to us here in New York City, here at CUNY, and thinking about transforming higher ed.
You go first.
Okay. I think there are so many ways that questions and discourses of decolonization and practice of decolonization are being engaged with in Puerto Rico. And this is it not new? Puerto Rico is the new world's oldest colony, right? 500 plus years of colonization. And so naturally, as a population being subjugated is always, thrusting for liberation. And that has been made ever complicated in the case of Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, I think if you're at the surface level, you're understanding that there are three particularly well-defined political parties. Kind of a conservative party that would like statehood, a more liberal party that would like to stay the same and keep the status of Commonwealth, and then a very leftist party that would like sovereignty, complete sovereignty. And then there's a lot of people that fall in the middle and in the mix of all of those things, right? But I think one of the things that has become clear and has always been clear is the kind of political violences of the Caribbean, right? Its formation, the way that it becomes a locus for power, right? For other nation states. And so because of that, Puerto Rico remains like under the thumb of the U.S. and used, right? In historical context as a showcase and other times as a warning, right? But in any case, I think that in the context of Puerto Rico, us thinking about decolonization has taken even on the next level, beyond the surface, right, of the history. There's also the folks on the ground who are working through what would decolonization mean? If we were free tomorrow, what would it change about our living conditions, about the ways that we treat each other, about violence, about femicide? What would it change about our consumption of material goods? What would it change about our farming practices? How can we rethink the possibilities for ourselves and our relationships with each other as we fight for a kind of decolonial future? And it might be that we're all fighting for different variations of a future without colony, without violence, without intervention, right? From, a giant hand, a big stick from abroad, right? But I think then questions of decolonization have also turned to questions of thinking about one's race, one's aesthetic choices. It also has so much to do with spirituality and the sacred, reclaiming languages, reclaiming practices, reclaiming one's kin, right? And to think differently about your duty to history itself. And I'm seeing that as a huge change. And actually, Bad Bunny also has something to do with this, right? Mm-hmm. At least with having people start to think differently, or a different generation of young people to scratch the surface and investigate, what is their role in the future of this nation, right? Of these people that have been so deeply dispersed that 6 million of us are in the diaspora and only 3 million of us are in our archipelago.
Isn't that something? Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this clock and we already got 3 minutes. But you're going to go, Val. Go.
No, I think it's always looked like young people being on the front lines of resistance, right? Like whether that be through mutual aid, eco-sustainability, abortion access, community kitchens, right? It's always been, I think, that Puerto Rican decolonial and liberatory practices are always rooted in ethics of care.
Mm-hmm. Love
always
it.
Deeply rooted in ethics of care.
I also think it's really important, your point, what you just said, Vallerie, that, it's often the younger people who are sort of leading the charge. And I think some of that has to do with the idea of trying to achieve something that they haven't seen, trying to achieve something that they imagine a future. And the idea that, as another generation, as an older generation, someone says, oh, that's not practical. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't do that. That's not in the tradition. The whole point is what's practical isn't working. Mm-hmm. And it's super exciting when we think about the way Bad Bunny, we started with that example, the way you're leading in ethnic studies and you're leading El Centro, and the way that you're developing a dissertation, Vallerie, in English, an English department, that is about sound and spirituality and about African diasporas. I think that is already changing so much and doing so much really important work. And I'm thinking about you now, Vallerie, because I want to know, as a graduate student, what are some of the possibilities and limits, illuminating, thinking about your university work and justice work?
Yeah, I think that one limitation that's been illuminated recently is the censorship of students and faculty around the genocide in Palestine. but the possibilities for me are always in the fact that we continue to resist, right? And we continue to not, the refusal to be quieted around it. And for me, again, the possibilities are just always in the ground up.
Right on. I think it's so true. And, we were talking about this in the last episode. We were talking about the kinds of censorship that are not just facing students, but are certainly facing students so much so that it's shaping how you're doing work, which means it's going to have long-term impact. And then the kind of work that people like Yomaira and me and some of our previous guests and the Futures Initiative is really holding its ground and really using and saying the words and doing the work, because we will not disappear. We exist. We will always exist. And the future is us.
Yeah.
That's us.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, as you're talking, it makes me think like it's really difficult for students now, just like it was for students in the 1960s and 70s when they were trying to get these departments created and support for them. You could see the resonances in that, and the free speech movement too, right? And all these other movements. And it's really hard to live through, like, I feel like I've been through a few waves of this in my undergrad and graduate life and as faculty, right? The kind of repression and silencing. And in the face of all that, sometimes I sit and I think like, damn, it's going to be so good to be on the right side of history. It's going to be so good.
heck yeah. You know what? I sleep at night. How about that? Because I'm not selling out. I'm not, we, you and I and Vallerie we've been training for this our whole lives. And the whole point is we're already interrupting, what's practicable, what's the tradition, because look at us here. And we are doing the work, and we are part of an institution that embraces us. And so that's pretty great. It's just really nice being here at the Futures Initiative, being at CUNY, and having colleagues like you both, and doing this work. And so I'm going to ask you last questions, okay? And my last questions are, what excites you right now? And what's your advice for graduate students? This is for you particularly, Yomaira, and for you to think about how you're going to navigate this as a graduate student and defend this dissertation and write the project that you want to write.
Okay, what's exciting you right now?
Finishing the dissertation. What's exciting me really is living and playing and learning in the archives. That's brought so much life to the work. I've been in the Schomburg for a little while in the Baldwin papers, and that's been exciting. But I think just generally what excites me is the interdisciplinarity of the university. I think is growing, and so it's nice to see overlap with departments. It's nice to speak to like other students that are doing other things and us sharing ideas. Also like a fellow for IRIDAC, and we come from the music department, we come from history, we come from English, we come from the urban ed department, and just being able to like share ideas, learn from each other, and sort of move forward in similar directions is been, and create community through that, right? Like PhDs are hard to obtain, and it's hard to write, and so having people through it is, I think, what keeps me going.
Right on. I love that. Community is so important. How about you, Yomaira?
I am excited on the professional level. I'm really excited that we have two exhibitions that we curated at Centro, or one that I co-curated and we presented at Centro after it came from the Broad Museum. That exhibition is going to Chicago, and it will be opening at the end of this month. The Diasporic Collage, Puerto Rico and the Survival of the People is opening in Chicago at the National Museum of Puerto Rican History and Culture. And the other exhibition that we did based on the San Juan Hill area, the Afterlives of San Juan Hill, which is a partnership, a project that we did in collaboration with the Lincoln Center to kind of trace and better understand the history of the Puerto Ricans, African Americans, and other families that were displaced when San Juan Hill and Lincoln Square were razed to create Lincoln Center and Fordham. And so we created our data team and our research and arts and culture team came together to create this beautiful exhibition, which was here at Centro and which is now in Puerto Rico, opening today at the University of Puerto Rico. So we're excited that
Congratulations.
our diasporic work is traveling.
Yeah.
And on a personal level, I'm excited for like getting the groove of this role at Centro, directing this behemoth of an institute, and then being able to get back into my art. And doing some printmaking and painting, and that has been writing poetry. It's been great. Like I'm in a moment, and it's so exciting. And so yeah.
You talked about bridging a gap, and I just have to mention this because we were talking about Bad Bunny concerts, but him bringing Marc Anthony on the stage.
Oh yeah.
For me, healed a wound like between New Rico and Puerto Rico, and like the global divide.
Yeah.
And the global diaspora. So talk about building bridges, and bringing it back to Bad Bunny.
And people were screaming.
My household was
screaming.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we didn't turn the TV off. That TV was on for 24 hours. The concert played for the full 24 hours in my house, and people were coming in and out. I had family, I had friends who were like, oh, I'm gonna catch this part of the concert. Okay, what? I'm like, yes, it's gonna keep playing. Just do what you gotta do and come back. It was a beautiful moment. A great it just offered so much, and I think he was trying to offer so much, right? Like in terms of abilities to engage with family. I saw pictures of older women like abuelas at the concert dancing with photographs of like their dance, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like everyone is in here, and it's great. And I even know some folks who were like folks who are retired professors and or who live out there, just other folks in the community who were telling me like, I might be in my 80s. I took my little lawn chair and I went to go sit in front of the Choli. I went to go sit in front of the Coliseum just to see the young people in all of their festive clothing and all of this. Like, it just was such a beautiful cultural moment, right?
Yeah.
And there's something about that that I think is so powerful, and it goes, I think, right to the center of what like Black studies, ethnic studies, Puerto Rican studies does, which is like connect the history of a people with a people, co-constituting, right? Your past, your future.
I love that. Co-constituting your past and your future. That is pretty fantastic. And the work of, last question, I'm going to say real fast, just one word. Latinx, Latino, Latine.
I use all of them. I think they're so important. When I was an undergrad, we were using the Latino with the arroba, with the at symbol. I'm actually editing the second volume of the Afro-Latino Reader. The first volume was published by Miriam Jimenez Roman and Juan Flores. And that very important anthology used the arroba with like just the Latino with the arroba or for Latino Reader. And so as the one of the editors of this new version, volume 2, we've had so many conversations. Should it be the X? Should it be the E? Should it be A/O/E/I/ all the things? And I said, for me, if you read my book, manuscript in English, I have the X. If you read my book, manuscript in Spanish, it has an E. So I'm all for accessible language, and I want people to find themselves. But what we did with the Afro-Latino Reader is that we kept the arroba and we put an asterisk. And then I think what we're going to do is we're going to footnote, like very early on in the book, like it has an asterisk because we wanted to be aligned with the first one visually, and also honor that we're coming from a history that already played with language to get us here to think differently about that binary. And then the asterisk, make it whatever you want, baby. It's going to be all right.
Yeah. I love it. Flexibility is so important. And I'm really glad you're here. And thank you, Vallerie,
for having me.
Vallerie usually produces us, and she is...
It's hard to be on the mic and in front of the camera.
You did a great job. And thank you, Yomaira. And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to learn more about today's episode about Puerto Rico with Yomaira Figueroa, the author of Decolonizing Diaspora, and also the forthcoming Survival of a People, or you want to follow the career trajectory of our fabulously brilliant Futures Initiative fellow, Vallerie Matos, you can check us out, our show notes on futuresinitiative.org. And of course, if you have a show idea or a comment, you can email us at futuresinitiative@gc.cuny.edu. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful